Morning, Gamecock fans. Today's Friday, December 5th, the year of our Lord 2025. This is Coffee with JC Shurburtt. Thanks for joining me today. Hope you had a wonderful week. My week is better than it started. Glad to be back home. Enjoyed my trip to South Carolina, but certainly traveling on Thanksgiving, as I've talked about earlier, was a challenge this year. Finally, some pretty good news for the Gamecocks yesterday. It's a big news day. And we're going to talk about all the pieces of news that rolled in throughout the day on Thursday. It was much needed for the fan base, for us that talk about it. It was just kind of getting old to factually talk about how bad the offense was this past year and how disappointing the Clemson game was. Didn't mind talking about it. It's not like I avoid negative conversations, but certainly glad to have some good news. And you can kind of tell the fan base as a whole on thebigspur.com, all over social media, perked up a little bit yesterday. And, it's always great to recruit. It's always good to make needed coaching changes. But it doesn't always equal wins, and wins are better than anything, right? That's the thing that'll perk you up the most. But you have to win in the off season to win in the season in college football at a minimum. It doesn't guarantee that you do, but if you don't, you're probably not setting yourself up to even be able to maximize, because your max, if you don't have players and you don't have good coaches and your roster's not right, you probably are behind the eight ball no matter how well you coach, especially in this league, in the SEC, that the Gamecocks have found themselves in. It's funny on that note. I think when Texas and Oklahoma came into the league, there were a lot of folks that were worried about the Gamecocks. It's like, God, you had two blue bloods in football. Texas is good at everything. Oklahoma's good at a lot of sports as well. They're kind of two of those all sports athletic departments. And head to head with those guys, they played Oklahoma twice, a win and a loss, have not played Texas. In basketball last year, they lost at Oklahoma, but beat Texas and Columbia. Texas is obviously an issue in women's basketball. By the way, Dawn Staley's team came back and won at Louisville last night, 79-77. Nice win. They were behind. You need tests like that, obviously, when you get to the tournament. And the SEC play. But what it did to make it harder on everybody, not just the Gamecocks, on everybody, is it threw the schedule into this, random 8-team thing, and you combine that with the portal. There's all these changes, and it can negatively affect you. It's not so much that, oh my God, we got to play Texas and Oklahoma. It's just how the addition to with those two teams have set up schedules to where, most teams, Gamecocks included, just, there's not very many breaks in football. Basketball is ridiculously hard. Baseball is ridiculously hard. So it's just a week in and week out because it's all imbalanced, with the exception of basketball. You do play everybody, some teams twice. But it's, some teams get to play teams that are struggling. Some teams don't, and that's just it. In baseball and in football. And so it makes it more of a grind. It makes it more of a grind and ultra competitive, even more than it was. So, it's one of those things. Vanderbilt right now in football, they're undefeated in basketball, if I'm not mistaken, too. So, and they're always good in baseball. So the ascension of the Vandy athletic department probably sticks in the crawl of many of you, myself included. But anyway, don't want to get off on that tangent. That's a good all-season topic. We talk football every day here on Coffee. It's episode number 201. It went right over my head. It was episode 200 yesterday, so a celebration is in order. But the football program yesterday finally got some good news. We were talking about Landon Duckworth yesterday in the morning on Coffee. I was like, I don't know when he's going to do. I don't know what he's going to do. I said, well, it's probably, from a resource standpoint, if you lose him, everything's about money. You could use the money elsewhere. I don't think he's getting crazy money, but 4-star blue chip quarterbacks that you have to battle Ole Miss and LSU and Auburn and Florida State for. They don't just pop up for free. And LSU came after him. It was a very big challenge to keep him in the boat, from what I was told by some contacts, but they did it. So hats off to Darren Usher and his staff. Shane Beamer is heavily involved in all aspects of recruiting. To get a kid like that in the boat when he's got Lane Kiffin knocking on his door and LSU, a program he visited, that's a very attractive option, and it's half the distance to Baton Rouge from Jackson, Alabama, than it is to Columbia. So there's a lot on paper in heading in LSU's favor, but it's like Duckworth said, I'll never regret signing with South Carolina, i.e., I love this place. They've been with me for a long time. This is where I've really wanted to go for 2-3 years. If I make this decision, you always got the portal too, and that makes sense if it just doesn't work out. But, you don't want to look back and go, well, I should have signed with South Carolina. That's where I wanted to go, but I kind of got caught up in the hype or whatever. But they got him. They got him in the boat. He is an electric player at the high school level. He also is a guy that plays multiple sports, is a state champion in multiple sports, runs track, plays basketball. Shane Beamer was talking about multi-sport athletes. Most coaches will tell you that they like that. And I like it especially at quarterback, because some quarterbacks these days they're kind of quarterbacking all the time. There's a bunch of 7-on-7s, camps, private quarterback coaches at the high school level. And, in football, especially I see this in Texas a lot. Texas produces some good quarterbacks, don't get me wrong. But sometimes it takes those guys a while, and sometimes they don't pan out because their high school team is so good and they spread it out and they never really get no pass rush. They're dinking and dunking all over the field. So at the college and like, holy crap, this guy's coming after me. And then it's 7-on-7, and that's not real football. You don't ever get hit. You can sit there and look very impressive at a 7-on-7, and it doesn't really matter in 7-on-7 who wins. It doesn't really teach you to be competitive. So give me the guy, if all things are equal, right? Give me the guy that hits the 2 free throws to send his team to the state championship game in basketball with all that pressure on him over the guy that's a 7-on-7 hero at quarterback. And I don't know if Landon Duckworth did that in a game, but competitive sports, you get used to the pressure, especially in games you care about, not AAU basketball, not 7-on-7, competitive team sports, the high school level. That's you want to win for your school and for your teammates. And so, or in baseball, the guy that comes in and gets a 3-2 pitch and drives it over the field, over the left field fence to win the game, or strikes out the side, anything competitive, soccer, whatever. You make a game-saving stop. Is it called a stop? A goalie? I don't know. I'll ask John Whittle about that. But I like that about Duckworth. He's really, really got a good set of wheels, quick, fast, live arm. Throws it differently. Some people compare him to Lenore Sellers. He's different. Same type of skill set in terms of being able to run and throw. He's got a really live arm, all over the field. And there's a reason he was one of the top 10 quarterback prospects in America, from Jackson, Alabama. So it took him right out of the state of Alabama. Alabama did not offer him, but that's probably a good thing, because my understanding is big Alabama guy. And in that state, many of them are. So Landon Duckworth at South Carolina, signed with South Carolina yesterday. And, it was a slight surprise. I think I said yesterday, I don't know. Some people think LSU right now with the way things are going. By the time Wednesday night or Thursday night, Wednesday night rolled around signing day, I felt a little better about their chances, because you had the LSU crystal ball. Everybody's kind of freaking out, chalked them up as done. Gamecocks went to work, and my understanding is mom wanted him to come to Carolina the whole time. So mama's happy. Everybody's happy, right? So Landon Duckworth, one of the best quarterback prospects in America, signing with the Gamecocks without an offensive coordinator or quarterbacks coach. How about that? Julian Walker. Now this did kind of surprise me because reading the tea leaves, I was like, well, he hadn't flipped before now. Usually happens during the season. I don't know, his dad's on staff there, so if that was a huge deal, why didn't he commit to begin with? But he flips. Dutch Fork High School got up there and said he's a Gamecock. This is a huge pickup. Um, he is a 6'5", 252-pound edge rusher. Good get off. Probably not as elite as Dylan Stewart, but not many people are as far as the get off goes. Hand violence, tough. Coach's kid. Good person, character. Plays for a winning program in Dutch Fork, which, by the way, Dutch Fork will play Somerville tomorrow night at Oliver C. Dawson Bulldog Stadium in Orangeburg at 7:30 for the state championship in Division 5A or Division 1 Class 5A in the Gamecock. Sorry, in the state of South Carolina. I don't know why I did that as an aside because I got the whole schedule for you and Four Quarter Fridays coming up, but I'll talk about that later. Uh, so Julian Walker, the Gamecocks kept working him and working him and working him. When he committed, there were about 3, 4 guys that committed in July, August-ish that were somewhat surprises. PJ Dean was one with Georgia. It wasn't a surprise, but on the day he committed, the Gamecocks were kind of ahead. Georgia was, they kind of went back and forth. Uh, Gamecocks went back to that well and tried to flip him. And they were made some progress, but he ultimately stuck with the University of Georgia, where his brother went. The other one was Samari Matthews that took the money and went to Texas over Clemson and South Carolina, which is where everybody thought he was going for 2 years, but he's going to Texas. Tamarian Watkins ended up with A&M. And then there was Julian Walker, which probably was the biggest surprise of them all, Michigan, when his dad's on staff and he's at Dutch Fork. But like I said, his family's kind of based in the Midwest. And so home to him may not necessarily be South Carolina because his parents have moved around a lot while his dad's coaching. At the time, all 4 of them, what I heard was it's not over. Like JB Shabazz was an offensive tackle that if we were not in the NIL world, he would have been at Carolina, but it was about money, and they're not going to go back and up the offer or anything like that when he committed to Tennessee and he signed with Tennessee or whatever. But these guys, they felt, well, it's not over with them. And given the way the season went and things of that nature, getting Julian Walker flipped, that's a good deal. That's a good deal for the Gamecocks. They didn't have an edge in the class. Signed 2 from high school last year in Quay Dodd and Anthony Addison. They're both from in-state. This guy's from in-state. You can't go wrong recruiting in-state defensive linemen. They're good. Clemson and South Carolina both have thrived with in-state D linemen. It hadn't really mattered what their rating, although Walker is, a top 150 prospect in the country. Some have him in the top 100 as the number 2 prospect in the state. It also gives the Gamecocks 4 of the top 5 in the state. Pops Anderson, Contavious Anderson. He went. Is it Pops? I don't know that Pro Anderson. Contavious, the kid from Dorman. I always mess up his nickname. He went to Clemson. He's a lifelong Clemson guy. He goes to Dorman. Gamecocks went down the road with him and did a good job being in it, but he's probably always going to Clemson. But I think that's good. I always say in the state with your top guys, the players you want, not some guy that's the recruiting services rank 3rd in the state because they fall in love with them and they have no local offers. Like there's no Georgia, there's no South Carolina, Clemson. They get like Virginia Tech, NC State, but then like the kid Von Benak's kid at AC Flora. That's an outlier, and we'll see. Anytime you see a player from the state that gets Oregon wants him. Okay, well, wow, that's Oregon. They recruit nationally. What's going on? You look at that and you see down the road, what happens. It's like the running back from Hammond that went to Michigan. couple of years ago. You see what happens. Sometimes those guys work out and you're like, oh, that was a mistake, but not. But I'm not talking about that. And that guy's not ranked very high. But sometimes you'll have a player that everybody's like, in the state that they don't roll their eyes, but they're like, oh, this guy's we know, in-state schools have passed on him. Coastal's even sitting there going, I don't know about this guy. But they like, for whatever reason, what he does, and he'll leave. Those are outliers. But I always say it's okay to lose one to Clemson, and it's okay to lose one to Georgia. Georgia will cross the border every now and then and get players out of South Carolina. It's just how it goes. And so that's fine. That's going to happen. No matter how good Carolina's program is, there's always going to be some kids that want to go to Clemson, and then Georgia's right over there, close to a lot of points to South Carolina. They've been good for forever. There's no problem with that. It's when you start losing guys to Michigan or Texas A&M in the case of Watkins, or if North Carolina came in here and beat you on a kid, or Florida State or Tennessee, God forbid. And again, on Tennessee, I'm not talking about Staley or Hyatt, or who you didn't recruit that hard. That's fair game. That's going to happen. But you don't want it to go back to the 90s. And so when you look at this class and the top players in the state, 4 out of 5, and then you got some other guys that I really like from the state as well, that's good. That's what this program has to do. And Julian Walker's kind of the cherry on top of the sundae, position of need, great player, in-state guy. His dad did a great job helping out with the tackles this year. Can't say enough about that flip. Sterling Lucas, he's a guy that really is good at recruiting his room and elsewhere. So hats off to him, and they got him. Okay, so more news. Yesterday, Xavion Hardy is in the transfer portal. Now, he was a flip on signing day at a JUCO from Mississippi State. Seems like Carolina's been recruiting him for 4 years. He needed to come to Carolina and work, and that just didn't work out. So be it. Ultra talented guy. Hope he gets somewhere that he likes and all that, and who knows, had Travian not gotten into the unfortunate car accident and all that, if he would have, my theory is either he would have gotten with Travian would have found a way to reach him, and he'd have gotten with the program and gotten better, or he would have been off the team pretty quick. His body language is weird. And he was a guy that always, coming from JUCO, was going to have to work his butt off to take advantage and maximize that talent. I'm not saying he's a bad person. I'm not saying he's lazy. I'm just saying some guys, when they get to college and they're in a program and they just don't, that's why you have a lot of guys hit the portal. They just don't get with the program. That's just not the fit for them. They need to be somewhere else. And so he is in the transfer portal off of the D line, and it's another spot that comes open. Markwell Blackwell is fired, the running backs coach. We talked about that at the end of coffee yesterday. Probably, there wasn't a lot of hard information out there about it, chatter-wise, but Hale said it. It was probably happening. Not surprised that the writing's been on the wall there. On that note, I think that, a lot of folks talk about, your running backs coach should be your best recruiter. And that's true. You need to recruit your position and work your area. But it's changed from the days where, even when Bobby Bentley was here under Will Muschamp, he did a great job of getting like Jaheim Bell, guys out of his area, so to speak. Shi Smith was his. But things were starting to change, and since Beamer came in with the portal and NIL, they do it a little different because you have these recruiting departments. I mentioned Darren Usher, Sam Searbier, those guys. They're much more because you have to deal now, even at the high school level, with agents. You're dealing with parents. You're dealing with this. Coaches have to coach and work their room because they're also recruiting perpetually with their players in their room on their own roster. So it's a time thing. So I don't know that you're ever going to see a running backs coach, and this happens everywhere, that goes out and signs half your class. Does that person need to be a good recruiter? Yes, absolutely. And your position coach is the one building the relationship, all that, because the recruiting people, they can't go on the road. You know, there's just much more an assistant coach can do. So they do need to be a good recruiter, and they do have to have their room in good shape. You know, that's the thing. Your position, I mean, Carolina at running back, since Beamer's been here, you know, Montero Hardesty signed nobody. Um, and then, you know, I guess he got credit for Matt Fuller, but that was, you know, I mean, I don't know. And then everybody left early. Just about everybody that was good left and hit the portal. So, or went to the NFL like Zaquandre White. So look, man, it's one of those things where, you know, that's been an adventure and it shouldn't be. You know, running back is not a huge position value spot. It's kind of like in the NFL, they've devalued the position. I don't know why. There's a lot of players out there in the portal and high school ranks that could play in the SEC. You have to identify them. And then the rotation and things like that this year, like whereas last year I thought it made sense. I was like, well, if you have Rocket Sanders, logic dictates you should run Rocket Sanders. But like the Jawarn Howell thing bothers me because Jawarn was like the third team guy last year. And then you look this year and he finally gets on the field and he looks a lot better than he did. Now, maybe it was a practice thing. Maybe he, you know, what I was told was, oh, he was just in fifth place to start with. And well, I mean, you can't run the ball. And I couldn't against Clemson either, but Howell had one carry. And so, and I don't know, I'm not coming down on Rasul Faison and saying they shouldn't have given Rasul carries or Matt Fuller or Oscar Attaway or anybody else. I'm just saying, wow, you look at Howell, he's, you know, he's 220 pounds, explosive, and he finally gets the start against A&M. And frankly, I think had they ridden him a little more in the second half, they may have won. So, you know, and am I saying Howell's going to be an All-American and making a declarative statement like that? No, of course not. You know, we'll see what happens. There's not enough to go on with that, but you can see it. You can see why this guy, you know, maybe should have been playing a little more. You know, and I'm not saying he got fired for not playing Jawarn Howell. I think there's a lot going into it. I think recruiting's a big part of it, staff fit. Maybe there's a situation where a new offensive coordinator has his running backs coach. I don't know. It just seemed like Blackwell never really fit. You know, there was that whole Ohio State thing when he first got there, and then you know, just a lot of weirdness. I thought he'd kind of settled in, but you know, after last season, I think nobody could do any wrong, right? I'm probably guilty of maybe just I don't know. I don't want to say ignoring signs, but obviously there were some changes that needed to be made, and he's one of them. I think it's important for Shane Beamer to get a good running backs coach too. They're not hard to find, you know, out there. There's a lot of really good ones. You know, just get a guy that can solidify the room, that guys like playing for, that they come up with a rotation that makes sense. Maybe they have some connections, can help you in the portal. Uh, I don't know as far as Fuller, Howell, Isaiah, Gustav. I don't know if any of those guys will leave. Gustav redshirted this year. It would be his third school in 3 years. He kind of got here late, fumbled, and then never played again. Which is another kind of weird thing about Blackwell. I don't know that the fumble Howell had in the Citrus Bowl didn't put him in some sort of virtual doghouse. And then you've got some older guys in Attaway and Faison, and then you've got you know, Fuller made an ascension up the depth chart, and then Isaiah. So maybe I don't know that it seemed like everybody but Rocket Sanders that fumbled was immediately in the doghouse. I'm not sure. I'm speculating out the hocus there, but anyway, so as far as those guys and leaving, I'm sort of confident they'll be back, at least, you know, two of the three. But you know, maybe you hire somebody in the portal that has some connections to a stud running back, and if he can coach and keep it going, you just don't want to hire a guy that knows one guy. maybe that's it. But this is two straight running backs coaches that, after you had Bobby Bentley, Thomas Brown, and Des Kitchings back to back to back, that, woo, and that's, of all the, through the years, Carolina's had some, Madre Hill was not good under Spurrier, Everett Sands. We've talked about his recruiting prowess. So I don't, I don't know. There's been some really good ones here, though. Robert Gillespie was excellent during his time at South Carolina. I just Jay Graham obviously was a stud. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with that position, but I hope Beamer gets a good one. So Shane Beamer hopefully can return to greatness at that spot because it gets frustrating. How can you not get running backs? And the state of South Carolina has. Yeah, like I've said before, two studs, one at Woodruff, one at Burns up in Spartanburg County, my neck of the woods. And then there's one at Gaffney I really like too. And the other part of that is there's some guys that I don't know. I just don't know. This is kind of weird. Running back's been a weird here. Thankfully, Carolina's been at least competent at the position. Rocket Sanders was the best one, but Mario Anderson rushed for about as many yards as Rocket did behind a terrible offensive line that one year. Of course, Rocket missed a game, but Mario didn't get any carries against North Carolina. That's another thing you look at. You're like, how many years besides when you have a no-brainer in Rocket are you starting off with one guy and then it's just then you find, oh, here's your best running back. I don't get that, but hopefully, and this is the next and final subject of coffee today. Maybe because they've had these pro style offenses that require, you know, running backs. And look, every offense requires running backs to block. If you can't block as a running back, you're not going to play a whole lot in college. Let's not cast all the blame on scheme around here. Um, Although I like to, you know, but maybe the less complex the offense is, the more you can just let your most talented guy go out there. Again, that's another maybe reckless speculation that I've had. So we talked yesterday about Jason Beck from Utah as being a candidate for offensive coordinator at South Carolina. Talked about Kevin Decker on Wednesday from Old Dominion. I'm hearing more Kevin Decker now. Um, and to me, I like that better. Now, again, it's a personal preference. It's just, I kind of like this. I could be completely stupid and wrong about it. And I wouldn't be upset with a guy like Beck. A lot of people talked about Buster Faulkner from Georgia Tech. You cannot deny how good he's been at Tech. And he's going to go probably, I think he's going to Florida with John Summerall as their OC. So a really good hire there for the Gators. But people were talking about why didn't Shane go get him? And I'd have been fine with that. The guy's proven and all that. But again, there's a difference between like things that can work and then just my straight up opinion. You know, I was a little hesitant with that when I heard David Pollock talk because I'm a big Buster Faulkner guy. Um, but he's at Georgia Tech. Smart guys have to go to Tech. Not that the Gamecock players are not smart. It's just you've got yeah, I don't know. And you got an offensive line coach as your head coach that emphasizes power run games and stuff. But David Pollock was talking about all the different personnel groupings. Now, it's probably a little bit of I don't want to say I don't want to say trauma or PTSD because people actually do struggle with that. But it's a little bit of I guess fake or artificial PTSD. How about let's say that to be respectful for those that go through it. I know some people that do, and it is serious. So, but it's a little bit of artificial PTSD when you start talking about personnel groupings around here. I'm like, ooh, wait a minute. Um, and Georgia Tech executes at a high level. Carolina's had an execution problem big time on offense, really, with the exception of, well, really the whole time under Shane Beamer. I don't think, I think the simpler the better, and again, the Mike Shula offense looked simple because it looked just very basic and simple, very complex. Uh, the offense that Mike Furry was running was very simple but looked complex until the Clemson game for some reason. I don't. We'll dig into that after a while. So there was the difference, and it was the same plays and same playbook, but just dressed up a little different. Um, a new coordinator is obviously going to bring a new playbook, and I think the better idea for Carolina and Steve Spurrier's offense was this way, and it worked obviously. Um, it's not complex as far as that. It's triangle based and things. Perry Orth explained it. Uh, but so good for the quarterback to learn. Not a lot of complex reads, though, to spot that kind of thing. But it looks futuristic and weird, right? It's a I talked about artificial PTSD. Let's just call it artificial complexity as far as what I think you want on offense here. Had Buster Faulkner gotten it, I'd have gotten behind it. He's a proven guy. Everybody been excited, but I mean, I don't say maybe not a red flag, but a sort of tinted flag, I guess. When I heard David Pollock say that, so we'll see if the Gators can what kind of personnel formations and things like that they have. They also have Brad White from Kentucky as their defensive coordinator. So Summerall hired two pretty good coordinators down there, and so that's good. Offense is key at Florida, but we'll talk about that on JC and Morgan or whatever. But Kevin Decker from Old Dominion, I like it because it's like Tennessee's offense. I mentioned it fits every quarterback that you hear. It fits Lenore Sellers. It fits Cutter Woods. It fits Aaron Nolan. It fits Landon Duckworth. If it's anybody you could that Carolina's got on the roster or incoming, um, all those guys can at least run. It's not very complicated from a read standpoint. You're not going to have Sellers or whoever dropping back having to do a lot of mental processing and playing slow because of it. You do have to block. You do have to play better on the offensive line, but I think you could run whatever system you want. When Spurrier was here and they were bad on the O line, he was good for a couple touchdowns a game. You got to get that better. And regardless if it's Sean Elliott or who the new O-line coach is, they're going to probably revamp that spot through the portal, through some young players. I'd look for Darius Gray to possibly start next year. It's not just going to be get a new coach and finally get some of these guys to it. I think there'll be some transition there, and their numbers are down. So we'll see. We'll see what the new O-line coach can come up with. I don't know any specifics. Nick Sharp's already left. With Nick, came in from Wake Forest, a lot of high hopes. I know that the staff liked him when he came in, was a proven player from Wake. But that missing, a big guy like that, missing all of spring with an injury and then not playing, not quite making it back, finally was forced into action some, did play. I mean, it never was good for the time he got injured at South Carolina. And he's a good person. I mean, so I wish him the best. I think his issues of the two in the portal, his issues were a little different than Xavier Hardy's, though they're both related to being in tremendous condition and doing the things you needed to do between spring and the start of the season to play. So we will see what happens there. Back to Kevin Decker, though. Old Dominion offense is top 10 in the country in rushing. That's another thing. A lot of people think some of these, high flying, and they'll throw the ball, don't get me wrong. At Carolina 2 years ago, with a quarterback that I wouldn't call accurate, kind of a 50% passer, they threw it 38 times, against the Gamecocks. And almost won the game. Now, it wasn't because of their offense. It was mainly because Carolina's offense could not score. But, yeah, they'll throw it all over the place. Don't get me wrong, but it is a system that runs the ball, and that's what you got to run it in the SEC against this. You got to be able to establish a run game. Now, it's not line it up in power and try to bully people. That's just not working. I mean, the run game, a friend of mine told me that coaches yesterday, the run game now is more about leverage and things like that. Trying to keep the defense off balance. And you watch Old Dominion, and there's some wicked run game stuff they do with pulling and things like that. So it's a good system. It's a veer and shoot. So you know, gun to my head, who gets it? I would say it would be Decker right now. Gun to my head, but you don't know. There's not a whole lot of. I mean, you can say what you're hearing, and I have reason to believe even more so now about Decker's candidacy than maybe I did 24 hours ago. But you just never know. We've been surprised before, right? So I think, but I know enough about this one to know that there's been conversations, and you know, they haven't just been, hey, how you doing? Hey there, Merry Christmas. So that's that. Anyway, folks, a lot of good news yesterday. Some more positive toned coffee. Maybe send you into the weekend good. Heck of a college football championship game weekend. The Big Ten and SEC in particular. Who doesn't love a good Alabama Georgia game? Indiana Ohio State. That's a fascinating game for me. I'm not. I don't think I'll be shocked if the Hoosiers beat them. I'm just saying. And I was not on the Indiana train last year, and really for the start of this season. I'm a believer now. I've been converted to the House of Hoosier, so to speak. It's in Indianapolis too, so they're in their territory. Not a bad drive over from Columbus, though. A huge fan base at Ohio State, so that'll be a great one. The ACC, it's like train wreck. Before hundreds of Virginia and Duke fans. I mean, my goodness. I mean, that's. I talked about the ACC being revenge of the nerds, and I didn't expect this in the championship. It is indeed revenge of the nerds. But if Duke wins, Manny Diaz says they should go to the playoffs. I'm sorry, no, you can't. Now, is Duke better than whatever second group of five? I don't know. They weren't better than Tulane. UConn, I believe, is considered. They're an independent. I believe they're considered a group of five. They've lost to two group of fives. Yet they go. I mean, that's weird. Illinois blew them off their home field. I mean, I don't think Duke deserves to go at all if they win. Virginia beat them pretty good in Durham too, but sometimes it's hard to beat a team twice. Man, I don't, in Virginia, man, in big moments, they finally got over the hump of basketball and baseball, but man, their athletics teams in big moments. We think we have it bad here. We don't compared to the University of Virginia. BYU and Texas Tech rematch in the Big 12. Hollow, that'll be good. And then North Texas and Tulane tonight. Two coaches moving on, but they could get in the playoff. Heck, James Madison could get in the playoff if they win the Sun Belt. Bob Chesney's going to UCLA, and Billy Napier has taken the James Madison job. James Madison and Tulane in the playoff. Unbelievable. Man, oh man. What a deal. What a deal. What a deal. But yeah, keep an eye on Kevin Decker. Keep an eye on thebigspur.com for offensive coordinator news. See what happens moving forward. I was told Beamer's talked to a bunch of folks about this job. It's not like the Shula promotion or the Loggins hire where he, kind of knew who he's going to go after. But it seems like he has cast a wide net, though. This, Kevin Decker, young guy, youngish guy, 45 years old, Gen Xer. I like that. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see if he brings some assistance from Old Dominion if he is hired. That's possible as well. Although Beamer's going to sign off on whoever. I mean, that's just going to be how it goes. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with that moving forward. I don't expect it to drag too much into next week. I'd be surprised. All right, don't forget Four Quarter Friday coming up live at 9 a.m. Steve Hall and his guests, cast of characters, will preview championship weekend. Always a special time. in the state of South Carolina. The games today get cranked up at noon. Oliver C. Dawson's Bulldog Stadium in Orangeburg, South Carolina State, noon. The 3A championship, Belton Honeypath Bears against Oceanside Collegiate. 4 o'clock, big small town magic. Lamar and Bamberg Earhart. Bamberg Earhart's right there. So that's kind of a home game for Bamberg Earhart. Obviously, they have great tradition there. Gamecocks have signed some players out of Bamberg through the years. And then the nightcap should be a good one. A loaded Irmo team, a lot of 2027 guys against Northwestern, Tamarian Watkins, and some other players. That's the 5A Division II championship game. Saturday starts with a great one. South Florence versus South Point. Gamecock commit Jazavian Currents against Bruin and the Bruins. Our friend Bruin from the Nana Sports chat box. 4 o'clock p.m., the pride of Hampton County. Pride of Hampton County. Alex Jones will be in the stands cheering his bahunkus off for his Hampton County team as they play Strom Thurmond for the 2A championship. And then a heck of a nightcap, the powerhouse Dutch Fork against a Somerville team that worked their way through the playoffs, had some close games, but got there. Hats off to the Green Wave. Dutch Fork, of course, has Gamecock commit Julian Walker. So four-quarter Friday will be live and loud, 9 a.m. Chief Sports app, YouTube, X, podcast will be up later. Probably not, maybe by kickoff of Oceanside BHP, but if you're heading out to Orangeburg, please enjoy it. Those are special. I just talked about how I'm glad to be back from South Carolina, but I have some FOMO, fear of missing out with these games. I love this weekend each and every year, and a lot of powerhouses playing, and a lot of good prospects will be on the field as well. All right, folks, this has been Coffee with JC Shurburtt. We'll see you. Oh, by the way, there's obviously no preview show today. But the morning show, we'll have Strickland, Flint, Rafael Esparza, and the show we'll welcome Matt Anderson in to chat it up with me and Phil. We're going to do that every Friday moving forward here as we get into football off season. SEC Sunday night. All right, folks, it's been Coffee with JC Shurburtt. You have a wonderful weekend. Holla.
Let's go. JC